Friends of the Frost Place. I'm Patrick Donnelly, Program Director. Joining us tonight are four celebrated poets long associated with the Frost Place: Rebecca Foust, Vievee Francis, Bryant Voigt, and Afaa Michael Weaver, and you, old and new friends and supporters of the Frost Place. We're gathered tonight for a specific purpose, which is to kick off a season of fundraising for the restoration of the Frost House on Ridge Road in Franconia, New Hampshire. From 1915 to 1920, Frost and his family lived in this house full-time and returned for 19 summers after that. One of the things that attracted Frost to this modest farmhouse is the stunning and ever-changing view of Franconia Ridge and Mount Lafayette, which has inspired many visitors and poets in residence to the present day. The Frost Place was founded in 1976 when a group of neighbors led by David Schaefer and Evangeline Macklin persuaded a Franconia town meeting to approve the purchase of the house. They also moved to list it on the National Register of Historic Places. In 1977, the Frost Place opened as a small house museum and center for poetry and the arts. Donald Sheehan was at the helm for nearly 30 years. He was instrumental in creating the poetry and creative writing programs on site and elsewhere locally, which in the current day has expanded to include online programming. Last summer, our poetry seminar on Zoom had participants take part from Nigeria and every US time zone. Since 1977, the Frost Place has also housed a resident poet during the summer months, and the diverse list includes some of America's foremost poets before they became better known. We're extremely grateful to Dartmouth College for sponsoring this program since 2012. This summer, we're thrilled to welcome poet Ariel Marie from Atlanta, nominated by Patricia Smith and chosen by Vievee Francis. In the next break, I'll say more about the current condition of the house and our plans for restoration. But now, please welcome our first reader, former board member and current advisory board member, publicity, social media, marketing consultant, frequent faculty member, most recently leading our formalist poetry track, poet Rebecca Foust.
Thank you, Patrick. I'm thrilled to be here and to see all your beautiful faces. I just wish it could be in person, and what I really wish is that we could all be at the Frost Place. I had an absolutely magical summer there, the summer of 2015, and I'm very grateful to everyone here and everywhere who had anything to do with making that happen. And I'm just thrilled to be a part of this and to get a chance to read with this incredible lineup of poets. So thank you. And thank you, Patrick. I'm going to start with a new poem called Has This Happened to You? You realize you know something you didn't know you knew. Like in what modern day country lie the ruins of ancient Troy, or the name of the boy Achilles loved, or the Trojan who speared him, or the first former beetle or drummer for the Stones, or your sister's first flame, who drank milk straight from the carton, whose name she now, 60 years later, and brain wiped by ALZ, Alzheimer's, cannot herself recall. He was a strapping young crew-cut man who came to court my sister and then left with her more winsome twin, our other sister, now in an ICU after swallowing a full vial of Tylenol. I knew before it happened, it would happen like this. There is foresight, and then it's impotence. Anyway, his name was Pat Nicodemus, who courted my sister, not to be confused with Patroclus, Hector, Pete Best, or Tony Chapman, each name a small ping of pleasure when I blurted out, surprising everyone, especially me, still playing the game. In the days before Google, it felt powerful and oracular. What we didn't know we knew, welling up on our tongues, coursing out and through like the body of a baby after the head is born. Something operating behind the scene, unseen, as a kind of sixth sense, like when you know without knowing your husband is cheating again, or what sometimes pulls your pen across the page like automatic writing, or your cribbage peg home ahead of the rest, when you've all along been wondering with immense concentration, did you remember to close the car windows now that you are hearing rain? How unknown are we to ourselves, unreadable code in the end. I never thought after 9 years of drought it would rain like the Amazon inside my car, nor that one sister would wind up living every hour of every day in the same Bonanza rerun, nor another so enwombed in despair, nor that I'd be the one to leave my marriage. After 4 decades of fear, my husband would leave, but somehow I was not surprised that my car, a sauna inside, would continue to run even after I found that floor mat profusion of mushroom, each pink cup turned up and open like a wish or a tiny satellite dish set to receive. The next poem I just realized was actually written at the Frost Place the summer I was there. And it's from my last book, which, thank you, Four Away Books, came out in 2022. And it's the title poem, Only. Oh, love, this happened, or it did not. In a room with green walls, my son was born. His cord was torn too soon, so they cut off his head to save his heart. He lived for a long time. For a long time, there was no breath or cry. When finally he spoke the wide whorled leaves of corn. He spoke the crickets in clusters beneath the sheaves. He sang the soil in. He sang the wind in the dune and the hush of ebb tide. Some say he died. Some say he died. So yesterday was the 75th anniversary of the publication of George Orwell's 1984, a book that I reread during the Trump years and was, like many others, struck by the disturbing parallels between that totalitarian dystopia and our emerging world. But what I'd forgotten is that at the heart of that book is a love story, a very passionate love story between Winston and Julia. And it was just a brilliant move on Orwell's part to make that story in the foreground, because for one thing, it makes all that political theory more readable, but also the idea of juxtaposing the individual against the state in that way, so that love becomes almost a subversive act and an act of defiance, defiant individuality. So I've been writing mostly political poems and love poems, which I'm trying to combine in a book. And the first one I'll read has an epigraph from Martin Luther King Jr., who said, "In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends." The silence. After the 2020 election, it rained on the West Coast after 9 years of drought. On the first day of the silence, we could not hear anything because of the cheering. On the second day, Big Brother announced his coup. We laughed and dismissed his childish tantrum. People were dying of the plague. So many kept dying. On the sixth day, cries of fraud, dead people voting, evil software eating votes, and so on. Lawsuits were filed. Big Brother searched for a lawyer. Any lawyer yielded a new elite strike force that spun even crazier theories, Medusa-like, and their ability to grow 10 heads for each one lopped off by the facts. Some of the silence, it's true, came from the fact that so many were dead or were dying, and others distracted by caring for them, and by funerals that had to be planned, even if they could not be attended. The silence came too from complicity, fear of being primaried, and blah, blah, blah. Let's just say it came from fear. After a long time, the silence was penetrated by a very few Republicans who came forward to tell the truth. All were denounced as party pariahs and traitors, and the White House attorney said in public that one should be shot. The silence grew deeper and more menacing. Big Brother lined up the military and ordered them to shoot themselves. On January 6th, the silence broke in an insurrection that was quickly quelled, but not before a noose got strung up for the VP. Our Capitol got shot in, and 5 people, not very silently, died. Afterwards, the truth was a watercolor left in the rain, weeping its meaning away. So next I'm going to read a love poem. It's not just the silence that has me so terrified, it's the actual lying by the government and the manipulation of language. Language is powerful, and I can't help but fear that it is affecting us on a very deep level. And that's what the next epigraph goes to. This is from 1984. You could not have pure love or pure lust nowadays. No emotion was pure because everything was mixed up with hatred and fear. This is in Julia's voice, and she's speaking to Winston at one of their secret meeting places. The link. Wow, what a great 2-minute hate. And the best part was the end where we all chanted, I love Big Brother, but how can you say to me now, I love you, and mean it? And how can I hear and believe it? How can I share your bed, fearing you might betray me, or you share mine? The language of love is linked to the language of everything. Beneath words lie feelings that do not lie, but when we are taught to lie, the brain learns cynicism, and the mouth how to weave curtains of guile no one can avoid. Love gets dragged into them, merely baffled at first, but then, like a whale in a drift net, sinks down till it can no longer fathom itself or its own depth. The whale will drown. If love survives, it will learn the tonnage of doubt and how to dwell in a place where any feeling feels false. Oh, let's stay here in our secret room where there are no secrets between us, saying the words until we make them true. Look, it's midnight. The world is everywhere webbed with lies, and love left tangled in them, muted and tragic and huge. But we're alive and here and now. We have exactly 1 hour. When Winston and Julia both wind up under torture in room 101, you'll recall. And when Winston's under torture, he tries to think about an ideal place from his childhood memory. It's warm and golden and full of flowers, and it's a place that reminds me a lot of where I am right now in northern Minnesota, near the Boundary Waters area. It's the ancestral land of the Ojibwe, who are mentioned in the next poem. And Winston calls this place the Golden Country. In the north, everything familiar will be strange, and everything strange will be strangely familiar. The sea will be fresh, not salt. The sun will be a pale, blind coin, and the air will stiffen with stays of frost. The lake will be lost in sea smoke and moaned by low foghorn chords. Later, its ice will stack blue in blocks along the shore. Days will be bone cold, short, and dark till June, when serviceberry will bloom to signal thaw in the earth and time to bury the dead. Soon berries in branches and in bogs wide as sky, then pie and good dense bread. We'll swim in water the color of pewter and blood and find agates banded eye within eye. Somehow this will be why we had come. Somehow this will be our authentic life, meaning maybe we chose being over being martyrs. A place that is liminal will call you to cross over. And in the wilderness, we will die out of our old selves so we can live in a cedar log room, drinking from a pump worked by hand behind yellow bloom. To get to the petroglyph, we'll portage twice and paddle.
The Frost House was built as a tiny farmhouse in 1826. It was expanded twice in the 1850s, and then again when it served as a private residence between Frost's departure and its purchase by the town. For decades, it has gone unheated and uninsulated, and the resulting freeze-thaw cycle has been very hard on the house. To make the house ready for Ariel Marie's arrival on July 1st, we've done a thorough cleaning as well as some interior painting, which was supported by the town of Franconia and substantial individual donations. While this is definitely progress, our long-term plan is to interrupt the freeze-thaw cycle by installing a heating system for the first time in decades. The condition of the Frost House and also worldwide events have had implications for the Frost Place as an arts organization. The house was closed to visitors and programming from fall 2019 until July 2023. Not only did we lose an important source of revenue during that time, but the empty house deteriorated. It's urgent to restore it now so it can resume its place at the center of our organization and the local and national community that we serve. Please welcome our liaison with Dartmouth College, frequent faculty member, policy consultant, and contest judge, Professor Vievee Francis.
Hello, thank you. It's really wonderful to be here. Patrick, is everything fine? Can you see me, hear me?
Yes, yeah.
Great. I thought I might open my reading with how I came to Frost Place. And originally, and this was, almost 2 decades ago, I was with a group of suburban Detroiters, suburban writers outside of Detroit. And every year we would vie to get into the Frost Place. And I didn't feel I could do it. I didn't think I could make it in with my poems at the time. And it was so exciting whenever, and I was the youngest in the group. Most of the people in the group were 10 to 20 years older than me. But it was so important in the Midwest, where there are far fewer programs like this and writing retreats and workshops and opportunities. It held a vital place in a place where at the time no one was really looking at the poetry. And I know that that place is not alone. That is what happens all over the country. Frost Place is far more important than Frost Place itself may understand. And then when finally I was at Frost Place, I wound up coming not as a participant, but as an instructor. So life is odd that way. And for so many of the students of many of Frost Place programs over the past decade, I meet them, I see them, and Frost Place was pivotal to their deeper entry into the field. And the other thing that made Frost Place so magical too was the access to these instructors, which were incredible. They had so much knowledge and were so generous every day, all day, talking with people, encouraging people, looking at poems. So um, the role Frost plays, the Frost plays nationally really can't be understated. So it's wonderful that everyone is here supporting a place that I early on came to love and am very grateful to be able to still work with Frost Place from Dartmouth. Okay, that's enough of my babbling on poetry is my forte. Um, I'll start with this piece. I've been thinking about love again. Those who live to have it and those who live to give it. Of course, there are those for whom both are true, but never in the same measure. Those who have it to give are like cardinals in the snow, so easy and beautifully lit. Some are rabbits, hard to see except for those who would prey upon them, all that softness and quaking and blood. Those who want it cannot be satisfied. Eagle-eyed, and such talons any furred thing will do. So easy to rip out a heart when it is throbbing so hard. I wander out into the winter. I know exactly what I am. The shared world. Into the bow of your ear, I whispered the secret story. Now you can't sleep either. Consider it part of your own memory connecting our childhoods that would have otherwise never crossed. I fell down and your knee was scraped. I stuffed the yellow cake into my mouth and your stomach cramped. When you were abandoned, grief filled my well. The private ravages of our spent youth and adulthood now implicitly intimate. You pull me to you because I have already softened your sharp elbows. The pressure of your fingers in my shoulders leaves an impression as if in need I had touched myself. We are insomniacs, the grip of night freeing us from the slept through day and its demands. It is true. Once you know, you can't unknow. So we ruminate on literature and the gods and continually seek the ousia of the emptied jug. But we need no wine, really. We are eager to get on with it, to take in or do whatever forwards this living, this tripwire, keeping us tied, kite to string, present to past, arrow to quiver. Break me, and I'll sing. My voice, like marrow, a blood yolk spilled upon the counter. You can't stop this song. More hands than yours have closed around my throat. You may crack me. You have cracked me. I'm frightened, but so what? I'll testify. If you can, listen. I slurped the frog leg soup gone bad, held a brass spoon like a barrel to my mouth. I could tell you what you want to hear, but I'd be broken just the same, so why not sing? I'm singing now, louder this time, and in the round. We are a wounding of red-plumed birds, every voice, a bloody feather in the bone crown. A call to arms, a call to arms came as the lanterns floated upward on a night of celebration, and as the flare spun upward out of fear of those who set them, as shawled women smiled in the night, prayed into the night, and just as many ran through the swallowing night, as a bed was shared between those shepherding each other, and as others shared nothing, nothing at all. As doctors took their oaths and committed no harm, privileging some, denying others, as another dies by the hands of a group of strangers, and another by the hand of her father, and another because a stranger was lost in the anger of his mother. I am telling you, the call to arms came as we slept and as we marched, as we questioned and as we hid, our heads in the dust of nostalgia, or our spent dreams, as bills came due, as the debt grew and values diminished, as women decided other women mattered less, as we raged and as we ignored, and the doors began to close and close and close and close and close, and those who had opened them were marked for death or forgetting, and those who kicked them down are marked for death or slander. And this is not the first time a call to arms has caught us imagining it had stopped. The call is ever, is constant. Don't you hear it? Don't you? Didn't it ring out in a peal of bells? It rings out in the silent appeals of children. A child who cannot remember the name of her father, you aren't listening. And if you are listening, you must keep your ear to the street, to the field, to the alleys, to the bridges, to the riverbed, and floor planks of abandoned houses. I heard the call to arms like a moan from a drain desperately clogged, and in the lowing of cows in drought, in the impotent drone of senators, that officious blather. And in this moment, I hear the call and realize I am not the lion, but the antelope, and I must resort to my feet and my wits amid a storm of teeth and claws on a day that began as any other day. And I can't tell you why I hear what so many refuse to admit, like the pounding of your own heart upon hearing this. Another anti-pastoral. I'm laughing to myself now because I've written a series of anti-pastorals. I lived in the city of Detroit, or in metropolitan Detroit, um, off and on for 30 years, though I'm out of the agrarian class. And I 30 years in Detroit will change you. So I found myself suddenly in mountains, and I'm in mountains now, and I have a challenged relationship with the wilderness. Another anti-pastoral. I want to put down what the mountain has awakened, my mouthful of grass, my curious tale. I want to stand still, but find myself moved patch by patch. There's a bleed in my throat. Words fail me here. Can you understand? I sink to my knees, tired or not. I now know the ragweed from the goldenrod and the blinding beauty of green. Don't you see? I'm shedding my skins. I am a paper hive, a wolf spider, the creeping ivy, the ache of a birch, a heifer, a doe. I have fallen from my dream of progress, the clear-cut glass, the potted and balconied tree, the lemon-waxed wood over a marbled pillar, into my own nocturne. The lullabies I had forgotten. How could I know what slept inside, what would rend my fantasies to cud? And up from this belly's wet straw-strewn field, these soundings. Still life with summer sausage, a blade, and no blood. East Texas, 1980. I remember we didn't walk, from the farmhouse to the store in Palestine, Texas. We drove the truck, got out, went in. The storefronts hadn't changed since my father was a child. He grabbed saltines from the bin. He bought a box and he brought some sausage. We walked. Yes, then we walked. Around town as we ate, he shared. He gave me some summer sausage cut from his pocket knife. I pulled the pieces from the point of the blade. I knew. knew nothing would happen, though he was silent, to alter this memory. We were together in Texas, and we ate and walked in silence, and it felt like smiling, like skipping, like calling him daddy, and him not minding at all. The poets who are our enemies. The poets who are our enemies are not writing for beauty's sake. Their poems come in bottles from the sea to be put to our ears like shells. There are poems buried in the sands of prison yards, backyards, sequestered under stones, stone that was once the walls of a city, of a station, of a house, of a room in the heart of a house. Poems are torn from hidden notebooks. From poets in hiding, poems are disguised as long stringed kites, are given to carrier pigeons disguised as more common birds. Some poems fall or are thrown down, wads, like grout between cracked tile. The poets who are ours to battle may lose everything to pipes, to wire and glass, to objects simple enough to be found in a cabinet. These poets may die by fast talkers, by mistake, by gun, by bomb, and some by God by choice. The poets write to us of children and of strangers. They write with fingers in their ears to hear themselves think. Their poems are the only thing clear where little else is clear. The poems speak of a meal of lemons, of baskets in an alley, of leather, and of the sea. Always the sun swallowing sea. The poets who are our enemies are not writing for the canon. Their letters black as smoke filling an emptied square. They are writing for their lives. Some are dead already by the time their poems finally reach us. Their letters bold as the cry of a dog heard over shells. Poems that speak plainly of a hand that seeks a hand, but finding nothing. And I'll end here. Dead or alive, the rats ignore us. No one moves away as the rats plump on refuse, refuse to startle. Take the one by the sidewalk in front of my neighbor's flat, its back humped against the brick edging, hungrily scraping, undulant, and not bothering to turn and face me, walking up behind it, choosing instead to stay and pack the holes with steel, wool, or cement, or antacids, hoping it's true that rats can't belch. I'm the one who shouts, then looks around to see who heard me so afraid. Too afraid to pass the creatures, stuffing themselves with something wet and undefinable under the masonry into their white-toothed mouths. What we wouldn't give for just one good flautist. Now, I think that works, but I've
Thank
never
you.
had that one before, but it's up to you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Vievee Francis. That was absolutely amazing. Uh, Rebecca Foust has worked her way back onto the Zoom. And Rebecca, would you like to finish your reading? Well, not hearing from her. So, Rebecca, are you?
Sorry, I was muted. Sorry. Anyway, sorry about that interruption. I'll just jump right back into this poem. We were on a canoe trip. We had seen a petroglyph on the side of a cliff that you could only see if you were in a canoe, and it was a petroglyph of canoes. And here we are. We'll come home sunburned and bitten and tired and happy, and that night we'll sleep with our limbs entwined. I'll dream of light, only light, pink, purple, and green, pulsing the sky alive. I'll see in the northern lights what the Ojibwe see, the dead dancing. I will see us, and I will wake up shouting your name. We'll be in the cabin, every window thrown open to birdsong and being, everything else held at bay, the burning earth, the state, the suffering state, our own suffering in the ministry of love. And we'll begin to remember again with our bodies how it feels to live as a child can live, and maybe to thrive. And I'll close with the title poem for my new manuscript, Shine and Blur. In my dream, there are no thought police, or at least they have not yet come here, where we sit on the sidewalk against the brick wall of what used to be a bank building. The pavement is cracked and scaled, and a weed pushes through, burning its tiny blue flare. It's warm here from the sun, the wall warm at our backs, where we try with small sideways hitches to occupy the same 2 feet of space. In my dream, I do not shy away when you lean in. No plague, no room 101, no jointed truncheon, no power and God-drunk politicians, no flag-waving henchmen. In my dream, I do not shy away, but kneel between your bent knees, framing your face with my hands and your eyes with my eyes, kissing you like I remember kissing you before, in the hedgerow, on the shore, on the threshold of a door opening onto everything, the break and release, released in a river, all blur and shine, shine and blur. Thank you, everyone. Sorry about that little interruption.
Thank you so much, Rebecca Foust. It's interesting to note that in Frost's day, there was no electricity or indoor plumbing at the Franconia house, but there was a large ornate cast iron coal stove used for heat. The non-operational stove on the first floor of the museum today isn't that exact stove, but it's one very much like it. I'm going to put into the Zoom chat in a moment a list of jobs that need to be done at the house with some of their estimated costs. They include drainage to prevent water from entering the cellar, gutters, exterior and interior paint, plaster repair, floor refinishing, window repair, replacement, electrical work, HVAC, insulation, chimney repair, and furniture. We're extremely lucky to have architect Don Metz as our board chair and literal in-house consultant about the restoration. He spent countless hours addressing issues at and about the house, and his expertise is one of our most valuable past, present, and future assets. Speaking of assets, please welcome our frequent consultant and faculty member with decades of poetic and administrative expertise and inspiration, poet Ellen Bryant Voigt.
Thank you. Thank you, Patrick. Thanks to everybody for coming. I'm very happy to be here and be reading with these wonderful poets. You said a decade, so I thought that maybe what I would do is to read some poems. Father's Day is coming up on June the 16th. And so I'm going to read poems about fathers, my father, and I'll read one from each decade. So the first is from Claiming Kin, my first book, which was published in 1976. And this poem is called Harvest. The farmer circles the pasture, checking fences. Deep in the broom straw, the dove withholds her 3 notes. The sky to the southwest is uniformly blue. Years of plowing under have brought this red clay to its green conclusion. Down back, the herd clusters to the loading pen. Only disease or dog pack could alter such order. Is that what he asks for in the late fields, the falling afternoon? And then the next one from my second book, Forces of Plenty, published in 1983. And this is from an elegy. It's in 3 sections. This is the middle section, which is called Pittsylvania County. The poem is called For My Father. In the front yard, my father and his son are playing ball. The round egg arcs toward a lap of brown leather, the sound of an axe on green wood, a bass hitting the water. The boy could do this forever. Only one glove between them, and he has it. The fireflies already discernible on the hillside, the grass wet. He doesn't falter as he skirts the waist-high crabapple tree or backs across the graveled drive. What am I after? Not shagging flies on the lawn with my father, and not drying the last dish with a fresh towel. My father is a stationary target through increasing dark, and out from my brother's cocked proficient arm, the ball leaps of its own volition into his hand. And then we go up to The Lotus Flowers in 1987, which is full of elegies and so full of father poems and mother poems too. But the one I'm going to read you is called Nightshade. You know what nightshade is, right? It's from that medicinal field that is sometimes used for digitalis, heart medicine, stimulate the heart. Nightshade. The dog lay under the house, having crawled back beyond the porch, bellying beneath the joists through rocks and red dirt to the cool stone foundation where it died as the children called and sobbed. And now their father had to wrench it out, the one he had been breaking to handle birds. This was a man of strictest moderation, who had heard a dash of strychnine in its meat could be a tonic for a dog, an extra edge. He loved that dog and got the dosage wrong. And I loved my father. I was among the children looking on, and for years would not forgive him. Without pure evil in the world, there was no east or west, no pole star, and no ratifying dove. I sat inside the small white house for hours, deaf to the world, playing my 2 songs, one in a major, the other in a sad minor key. I'm going to go up to 2002. And this again is part of a sequence. This is the second poem out of a sequence called The Art of Distance. My father was an earth sign and a stoic, an eldest child, a steward, who took dominion over the given world. At least it seemed his 100 acres of it. Pets we ate, rabbits minced in the combine, inchling moths torched in the crotch of the tree to save the peaches. Scorned excess and complaint. Importuned, said, no, not, can't, never will. What didn't fit was seeing him cry. He'd stand alone in the field like a rogue pine that had escaped the scythe, as he would stand beside the family graves, a short, important distance from the car, where we were hushed until the white flag had been unpocketed, and he jangled his keys and got back in, not ever looking at us, not looking at the brisk, instructive face my mother used on clerks, on amputees. This all happened long before my mother, in charge of cheerfulness and world morale, had lost a body part and given up. So it was never in response to her the way he wept, or equally the way he moved through life, one hoof after another. A sentimental man is singular, still the boy whose mother has gone away. The last full day of our last ritual visit, he'd taken a turn already into the field. What set him off was hearing the neighbor's gun. She merely wanted the turtle out of her beans. He hauled the carcass home, 2 feet wide, a rock from the creek, and also elderly, if the shells, whorls correspond to xylem and phloem, rings we'd count on the cut trunk of a tree. Tastes like chicken, he actually said, gathering the saw, the maul, chisel, pliers, hatchet he'd need to unhouse the body and chop it up. No one wanted to help or even watch, except the child intent on the row of knives, and the child changing her mind with a webbed foot's wave. Dinner was not quite dead, but shudders and tears were weakness and wouldn't work. Jokes wouldn't work on temper alchemized from noun into verb, as my father pried the armored plates apart, paled and sweating and silent. And never did he, sun long gone down, once quit the bloody porch, the bowl of the upper shell in shards, the entrails bejeweled with flies, the beaked head, feet, and tail cast off into wet grass, until at the screen, holding a platter of meat, he might have been the Queen's woodsman bringing back the heart. I heated the oil until it spit at me, dredged the pieces in flour as I would chicken, flung them chunk by chunk into the pan. When chewed, undefeated lumps ringed even his dish, he said I'd done the best I knew, not naming the skill, deflecting sorrow and terror into a steady fierceness and aiming that. Okay, this one is just a little bit longer, and then I'll be finished. And look forward to hearing Afaa. This is called Owl. The sign for making the most of what you have on the human hand is a thumb at full right angle to the palm. For the owl, it's 2 talons forward, 2 back, a flexible foot that crushes the prey and lifts it to the beak, to the eyes, which are legally blind. This is why the owl hunts in the dark in the dusk when nothing is clearly seen, and why the owl's eyes are fixed, facing ahead to better focus, so its whole face swivels in each direction like the turret on a tank. The round plates of feathers surrounding the eyes collect the least sound. When it turns, the owl is computing by geometry the exact location of the mouse or snake or songbird that moves imperceptibly in its nest, toward which the owl sets out from the hole in the tree, the burrow, the eave of the barn, and crosses the field in utter silence, wing feathers overlapped, to make no sound. Poor mouse, poor rabbit. Last night, from the porch obbligato to the brook and the snuffling deer, intent on the gnarled, worm-bitten apples we leave on the tree, I heard what must have been a barred owl or a barn owl or a lesser horned owl close by, not deep in the woods. What I heard was less a call than a cry, a fragment repeating a kind of shudder, which must be why the country people I come from thought an owl was prescient, ill omen meant to unspool the threads they'd gathered and wound. I was a grown woman when my father took the key from under the eave and unlocked the door to the darkened house he had grown up in, and stepped across the threshold and said, as he entered the empty room, "Hello, Miss Sally," as though his stepmother, dead for weeks, were still in his usual chair. In the medicine wheel, the emblem for wisdom is the same for gratitude. At dusk, at dark, the far-sighted owl strikes in utter silence. When we hear it from the tree or the barn, what it announces is already finished. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the Frost Place.
Thank you, Ellen.
Hold on just 1 second, Afaa. Ellen, that was an amazing retrospective. Thank you so much for that. It's so very powerful. A little bit now about how you can support us to restore the Frost House. You can be guided to donate by PayPal, credit card, or check via the donate page of our website at frostplace.org. We've created some levels of giving there, and you can donate after the reading or at any time in the coming weeks. A donation of any amount will be deeply appreciated. We'll be seeking funding through a New Hampshire-based grant program that requires matching funds called LCHIP, Land Community Heritage Investment Program, which helps to fund the maintenance of historic places. Now, please welcome our last reader, current advisory board member and frequent faculty member and contest judge, poet Afaa Michael Weaver.
Thank you, Patrick. And again, thank you, Ellen. That was wonderful. Vievee and Rebecca, also wonderful. Good to be here virtually with Frost Place and to pitch in and try to get things fixed and repaired and replaced there. It's a wonderful place. I'm going to read from A Fire in the Hills and start out with something about Baltimore, my hometown. In a border town. In this version of the city, no one dares read. Ragtime grows underneath Washington's obelisk, not a monument, but a threat to the clouded sky. Next door to McCormick's, a telescope sits, looking over the harbor inside all of what is, for a new constellation, the hidden dancers. Adjoining convergences that come only when September moons bring heavy rains, a deluge to sound alarms, to haul in the blue crabs. In all of this, we are overgrown ants, brittle on the tongue, held up above ourselves, singing Southern chants for spells to soften the hard. What names us? I ask a man shuffling in bags, a man who knows the giant ants we have become, who knows us, but says now we have no name, but purple iris in a golden vase over the harbor, peace wrapping itself over the city's north border, where horses reign over the emptied corners, where I climb back into the old way of dancing, wiping away the spinning top hairdos with thick mask over the need to be naked and breathless so I can be freed from the one spent song. Still in Baltimore, in my neighborhood, my first gun. Not even a week out of prison, he's sticking the thing in my face. 6-inch barrel, 22 or 38, ages I just might not make. Minding my business is minding his in our world. The top of the hill, high point of the valley, Milton Avenue, our grave. And this is a world folk will name with cameras, the corner, and later the wire. Sad stories of children not yet born, our children, cherubs. A gun changes things, changes your mind. Not even a week out of prison, he's sticking the thing in my face, and I count the chambers. 6 chambers, 6 the sum of 2 times sacred 3. 3 the number of parts of God or a liquor bottle, the cap, the head, the body, a shallow torso to break. A gun changes things, changes your black mind, makes you want one to talk back to the one pointing in your face. But dumb guns don't talk, they wait. When they speak in thunder, the loud tap on the body to demand that it open itself up, edges of black skin screaming, falling away. Moving to Chicago, blues in 5-4, the violence in Chicago. And movies about the end of our civilization, toys fill the broken spaces of cities, flipping over in streets where children are all hoodlums, big kids painting themselves in neon colors while the women laugh, following the men into a love of madness. Still shots show emptiness, tearing the eyes of the last of us who grew to be old, the ones the hoodlums prop up in shadows, throwing garbage at us, taping open our eyes, forcing us to study the dead in photos torn from books and burned down libraries. Chicago used to be Sundays at Gladys's Luncheonette, where church folk came and ate collard greens and chicken after the sermons that rolled out in black churches, sparkling tapestries of words from preachers' mouths, prayer books, tongues from Tell Me Alabama and Walk On Mississippi. Now light has left us, the sun blocked out by shreds of what history becomes when apathy shreds it, becoming a name the bad children give themselves as they laugh and threaten each other while we starve for the laughter we were used to before the end came. And the time of the rebellion, as some of us in my generation call the 60s, life went on as it does during times of what we thought was war. And so some people just continue to hustle. Game of Losing, 1968. I take a toothbrush to the soles and clean the threads so my new Stacey Adams speak to the non-believers. Brand new knit pants, my high-boy shirt collar starched, my knife in my pocket, my Roscoe under the car seat, $100 bill wrapped around 20s, a wife, 2 outside women, liquor and cards. Can't nobody tell me street life ain't sweet. 2 double shifts in the coke oven, a check fine as Wanda's eyes, rent paid up. I'm high on the fat hog, clean card game at the bar. Tell Dolores the deacon got a prayer meeting. Head on over to Wanda's to lay up for a week. Let the women work to make the long money. A wife, 2 outside women, liquor and cars. Can't nobody tell me street life ain't sweet. The coke oven's so hot, my sweat rolled like the lies on a broke preacher's tongue, rattling like always. Dreams say life just a game of blackjack, a new deck. The dealer showing his hands as if he ain't cheating while we draw cards to burn the city down. A wife, 2 outside women, liquor and cars. Can't nobody tell me street life ain't sweet. Moving to South Carolina, to Charleston, I was there back in last year in April. And we went to a restaurant, my wife and I, and I said, Kristen, this place looks like it might have been a military installation. In fact, it was part of the forts that were lining the harbor at the time of the war, which I found interesting. My wife found it a little unsettling, but Charleston is an amazing place, both in its contemporary sense and its historical sense. And I felt for the two men who faced each other when at Fort Sumter, as the man who was firing on Fort Sumter was a top student of the man defending it, trained at West Point. And I thought about how the country was torn apart, families, loyalties, friendships, just an incredible amount of anguish and wounds that are still not healed. Charleston. In a fountain at the harbor, children wash themselves in water spraying in the heat. They count themselves dark and light. The aircraft carrier sits in the moist nothing of salt water, tons of tons weighing in the soft splash. We count our wishes to be free, to be at ease, to be in abundance. Above us, spirits whirl in a thunderhead. One steps across from the slave mart. I peel an orange for the slow rip of its flesh on my thumb, the sweet dotting of my nose with its juice. I suck the threads of it, gaze at the wooden doors now closed, at the empty space inside with iron hooks. I can see the white folks' heads checking available cash in front of naked Africans, chained, bereaved, and listening to a cruelty yet to be born. I can smell the congregation of odors, humans fresh from slave ships or working in fields, and humans fresh from beds of fine linen, sleeping with fingers in Bibles and prayers. This is not a petty thing, because we have a rental car with an air conditioner, a tape player, and various cushions. We have come far to do this, to gaze out from the banks of this plantation river to the rice fields, to walk in Charleston. I keep the heat from threatening my life, and I wonder if I could have survived slavery to be old, if being old is all there is to live to be. I walk around the slave quarters and hear African languages speaking in magnolias. An epistolary for Breonna Taylor, Midnight Air in Louisville. Dear Breonna, how many times, I ask, how many times have I chased the thought of writing to you, of catching the poem where it cannot leave, of knocking open the door to a grief we all hold, our hearts full of questions. We leave our houses to work, to look for what we need to live, or what we need to make the pain go away. And your voice rises, oh, hell to the no. No, he didn't. Satan, get behind me, whatever the hell you think you are. I imagine that in leaving all of us, you said, I am done. I am let out into the world. Breath I took in from it, breath that I give back in love. May I see you in flight, filling the space beyond clouds and stars, where there is no need of sun or moon, where a grand city lives in prophecies beaten by the wheels of history, where you are not invisible to ancestors who saw these long roads down through time to this one night in Louisville. Bright angel, luminescence, woman who saved lives in emergency rooms, invocation of heaven's law, living song, riding the eternal dawn. These titles I summon from a license given by eternal mysteries to hold you. Fly now in the woven air of the saints. The difficult thing in trying to pursue non-dualistic thought is to look at the other side with compassion. When the slavers died at sea, the dread came over the edge of the deep with the lightning of the sky, the yellow peak into time, and when the ship came without him, the dread became the terror of having a heart's skin peeled back from love, the way columns and clumps of people were tucked away in the ships. Out in the midst of waters, history's maker in a black lace dress, tucking them by the 200 or 300 onto shelves, touching them with some mystic caretaking when their heads roll with the whim of oceans, tapping the tiny black feet of children to wake their hearts when it seemed they were sliding off, the way the bodies of sailor husbands hit the water in angles, then plumped down to look for the bottom of things, where stories end themselves on other sides of the eyes of fish with gel lips. There is this hardness to life. So I think just one more, and this is, well, maybe two more. One, let me see. For my friends Jim and Camille, who were just wonderful. They were adopted parents of mine in the world of art. Camille Billups, the filmmaker, and Jim Hatch, the playwright, and first generation scholar in Black theater. God is. Inside the most quiet and still moments in your studio at night, the suggestion of a song and the ticklish part of taking a shower and feeling utterly like the child of your mama. The most unspoken regret you share with no one but know is known by your art. A way the floor creaks when you think this man who is your husband is thinking the way a wish seems to be in the night sky when you stare long enough at the lights. Breakfast at the table with the black cat knowing everything you have forgotten, what you dream of youth and what a woman can do to make a man weep. Touch and what touch is, your fingers to paper, the nakedness of your feet to the earth. A belly beautiful grasp on what laughter lies inside realities like being totally niggerish. The real meaning of Zai Waterly, me and your ego, Hen Futsa the searching. Oh, there's something strange in me. When you forget, it's in Chinese. What LA was when you were 9 years old, and it was another kind of Negro in America. The sound of wind in Egypt at night when you are beyond time and in the arms of secrets, wishes, and wherefores, and what lies in the blank stares of a South Carolina sweet potato pie. Seamstresses of the soul will spin their thread in memories of rent parties on 11th Street. That black man who liked to call you hat, and the mystery of what Negroes do to English, collard greens and biscuits, and the way the city feels when you leave all the cities you know. Imagination, or just what it is to lie down for weeks in the chains in the bottom of a boat called Jesus, or all art and what that needs to be in a world so fucked up it is beautiful beyond all dreams. And I will close with a remembrance for my son who passed away 2 years ago. My son flies to visit me in Providence for Kala. You shot past the flight attendant trying to look worldly, but for all your sang-froid, you were quite askew, 12 and traveling alone, your shirt tail flapping out, collar hanging over your jacket, buttons misaligned, shoelaces flailing about. You were quite terrified of having flown this far with strangers. We walked along slowly through the airport as small as a Kmart, where passengers dressed in jeans with cheap bags waited for flights to the outer world. They were refugees from the rustication of Rhode Island with the mafia and the international village of Providence. I pointed out to you the hill where the colonials fought back the British, a hill owned by a slaver. You were not impressed by subtleties of lives lived and gone, and wanted only to know why at this juncture in your grand design, I had chosen to come here, away from everything we both knew. I took away the tidy row house near the lake, afternoons in your room with videos, Sunday roar of fans from the stadium where the Orioles lost game after game, and the hikes through the park. I remembered regretfully that you left first. You smashed the photograph of us standing together and called your mother and left. What are children if they are not conscious of what they do, even if they cannot fully see the outcome? Neither can we, with our wealth of mistakes. So in the vacuum, I left too, left everyone. I left to recover something lost long ago when I had more chances. You wanted to know why there was such pleasure for me in a brick room full of books, as you threw tantrums and begged the impossible, to be readmitted into my small space, to be relieved. But on the last day I sent you back, agreeing with your mother's wishes. Sadly, I signed you over to the plane and to the good graces of Eleanor, my first wife, who waited, smiling, in our youth. And that's from Multitudes, 24 years ago, Sarah Band Press. Thank you, and I hope I have done something to help the Frost Place. Thank you all for coming.
Afaa, thank you for those beauties. I am so grateful for your reading and your poems. Thank you to all our esteemed readers. We're deeply grateful for your longtime support of the Frost Place and the audiences and participants we serve. Again, you can donate now on the donate page of our website at frostplace.org or at any time in the coming weeks. Please check the website for details. Robert Frost's presence in Franconia and the belief of the importance of the site on the part of the town of Franconia created a literary meeting point in the White Mountains. For half a century, a who's who of American poets has poured their energy and expertise into maintaining the Frost Place as a center of instruction, encouragement, refreshment, and community for countless other writers. Your support will go directly into the necessary repairs to secure and enhance the house for another generation. Thank you all again, and good night.